Hi students, I wanted to give you a short video here where I could kind of give you a hands-on example of what using instructor feedback might look like. And since I'm an English teacher, I happen to have some resources that deal with giving feedback on essays, but you know that from the video and from my other video, there were 2 videos in the assignment, they talk about how you get feedback in a lot of different ways. So you get feedback from your instructor. Sometimes it's verbal feedback where they just say, you know, good job, Johnny, I think that's a good answer. Or maybe it's nonverbal feedback where they smile at you or they, you know, nod their head when you're giving an explanation to something and say you're right. So you get a combination there of verbal and nonverbal feedback. Or it might be written feedback. Maybe it's on an essay or on something you hand in where they say something like, you know, you did a good job at this, or you need to work on this, or this is an issue here, or this is awkward. Even if it's an automated quiz, your computer gives you feedback by telling you that was the wrong answer. Sometimes they even tell you the right answer and you have to figure out, well, why is that the right answer? That's all feedback. So what I want to give you here, this is an example of a student essay. And when you see the feedback, I try to be as transparent as possible to my students with my comments. Sometimes they're handwritten, sometimes they're written in the comments section of Microsoft Word like this. And you can see some are very obvious, right? If I say nice title and there's a smiley face, that's positive feedback. Or introduction does a good job engaging the reader. And setting the stage for your thesis. So the word good in there, you know, clues you in. These are things that you did well, that I tell my students we want to carry these over. We don't want to leave these behind. Some other things that we might see or something like no comma, MLA error. But again, MLA error, I didn't tell the student what the MLA error is here, and largely that's because I don't want to have to rewrite every paper I grade. So if I corrected it, and I went back and I said this is what you were supposed to do, or this is a way to rewrite this sentence, I would be not only grading it, but I would practically be rewriting some papers. And so this is an example of how it might be the student's job to figure out, well, I know something's wrong here, but I don't know quite what. What should I have done? And that's where going to their MLA section in their textbook could be helpful. Going to see me during office hours could be helpful. You know, asking a peer could be helpful, finding out from a learning center tutor could be helpful. So there are some things at this student's disposal they could do to figure it out. And sometimes it's easier than others to figure out what you should be doing or what is wrong. And like I said, sometimes it's a little bit more challenging. It's not as simple as fixing a comma splice or saying, you know, this sentence is a fragment, you need to make it independent. Like here, it says, I'm not sure how this paragraph functions as support for homeschooling. It is not unified and seems to be about 2 different things, both of which are implied rather than directly stated, and the 2 ideas need more individual attention and development. And then I go into the 2 different ideas, and I say, finally, while your own experience lends ethos to your argument, including some research on one or both of these points would make them more substantial and persuasive. And you can pause here if you want to read this on your own instead of just listening to me. But I think what happens with students here is, you know, even if the student understands what I'm saying, they might say, well, okay, I get you for this paragraph, but because every essay is different, it's not like a math test where you might have a comprehensive final exam that covers all the types of problems you had before. In writing, you know, you're going to have a completely different paragraph when you're writing your next essay. So how do we transfer that skill? What's that going to look like on the student's next essay? So if there's any ambiguity there, that might be something the student will want to come to me and clarify. I like one of my colleagues, Dr. Perez, has this revision matrix that he does with his students, and I think I might adopt this. I think it's so helpful for understanding instructor feedback, is that in addition to their essay, Dr. Perez has students go through his comments and you see instructor feedback, and copy and paste them, since he does everything in Microsoft Word. Copy and paste them into this table, and then all these are blank. So when the student gets this table, it's blank, except for it has instructor feedback in my own words, my strategy for incorporating instructor feedback into my final paper, my questions about instructor feedback. So after they write their paper, he goes in and he says, okay, copy all my questions over to this, all my comments to this first column. So he must have written cite research, well done, page number, avoid open-ended questions, those kinds of things. And then he has the student reflect and say, okay, what does this mean to you? So that's where you have to make sure you understand the instructor feedback. So it says, Dr. Perez would like me to not use open-ended questions, and if I use a question, it should be clear and specific. And then my strategy for incorporating instructor feedback into my final paper. So they talk about how they would turn that question from their paper into a statement. So this is the statement that would eventually be in their paper, instead of how it was phrased originally as a question, like, is there a possible link between MMR vaccinations and autism? Instead they say, the possible link between the MMR vaccination and autism has raised many questions today. And then my questions about feedback to instructor, you can see this isn't in every box, but maybe they don't really understand it fully, or they say, is it appropriate to use a question at all? If not, ideas are welcome. And Dr. Perez then comments on the student's comments. So there's this communication loop that's going on. I think that video referred to it as the feedback loop, where he says, it is not appropriate to use open-ended questions in academic writing. Remember, you are the expert with the answers to questions documented by your research. So when he goes back, he makes sure the student understands the comments, that there is some strategy they have for changing things, and then eventually they resubmit the paper. And we hope, at that point, that they've learned from whatever issues they had. But I will attach these documents to this video just so you could have it as a reference, because I think it is a good example of, even though you're not going to go through probably this whole table idea every time you get feedback from your instructor, this is a good step-by-step analysis of feedback. And so you can go through this mentally when you get something from a teacher. I know I've had students already in our SLS class say, you commented that I had grammar and mechanics issues, but you didn't specifically tell me what issues. Can you pinpoint the actual sentence where I had them and what the issue was? And I said, sure, that's a good point. So sometimes instructors may give you feedback that's too general or vague, and you may need to chase them down to get it a little bit more specific. But again, that is, we assume in college, that is your responsibility. And that's what the assumption we're working under. So please let me know if you have any questions about using instructor feedback. Like I said, this is just one example from English. I'm sure you encounter lots of other types of instructor feedback, but hopefully this helps you understand ideally what you would do with that information.